Good morning, Flatland Fly Tyer here. This morning we're going to be tying a fly that I came up with to fish for stripers and wipers, and I think it'll work on a lot of other species too, particularly Northern Pike in Canada. And I call it the Critter Gitter, and it is an heavily articulated fly. We've got 4 articulated segments in the back of it, and as the tail. And so we've got lots of wiggle. We also have a lot of flash with this fly. You can see at the end of the tail, there's the last section I call the bang tail. So it's got nothing but flash on the last segment of the articulation. And then the rest of it's primarily bucktail with a little bit of internal flash that we'll show you in a minute. And it's got some lateral scale for lateral line, and also a saddle hackle to resemble a lateral line, and a thread head with eyes, and ultimately it'll be coated with epoxy. So let's get started. We've got an articulated segment in the vise now, and it is a 3/8 inch fish skull segment. And we're also going to use, I'll get these out so they're ready, some 5/8 inch segments. We're going to use 3 5-inch segments. We've got 4 total, 1 3/8 inch and 3 5/8 inch segments. Here is one of the 5/8 inch segments. And in the end, it's going to result in a fly that is close to 5 inches long. So it's a big fly, big meaty fly. Start the thread on the last segment. And one thing about these articulated segments is up at the front where the wire bends over and terminates, that tends to be a little sharp and will cut your thread in a heartbeat. I'm using some 140 denier ultra thread. So what I do is get up to the front. I take some loose wraps so I don't have tension on the thread till I get up over that edge. That keeps me from cutting my thread on the end of that articulated segment. Now for our bangtail flash, we're going to use some, I guess this is kind of a rainbow color. There's some gold and green and red or orange in there. And we're going to take quite a bit of it, probably, 8 or 10 strands of that stuff. We really want to get that fish's attention when this thing hits the water. Cut it in half, cut that bundle in half, and then tie it in about at the midpoint of that bundle of flash. And then fold half of it over to the other side and tie it down. Clean that up a little bit. And whip finish. So let's trim the flash off. So it's about, an inch and a quarter, inch and a half long. There we go. And we'll use some CA glue, some Zappa Gap on our thread. I'm starting out with some yellow ultra thread, and we'll switch later to an orange. Okay, now we need to help spread the opening on this articulated segment. Get it attached, there we go. Now we'll remove the first segment and attach the second segment in our vise. Take our thread, reattach it. And again, go up to the front where we have that wire edge exposed and get some loose wraps around that to prevent us from cutting our thread. I was doing another one this morning and I cut my thread twice on one segment. Okay, for our first material, besides the flash, we're going to use some yellow bucktail. And a lot of times at the base of the bucktail, you'll find some shorter fibers. In this particular bucktail, there are no short fibers, they're all really long, so we're going to have to trim those up a bit. So we want a decent sized clump of bucktail. And this is way too long for what we're going to need, so we're going to do a couple things. We're going to take out some of these longer fibers, do that off camera. And then we'll grip about midway up our clump and take out the shorter fibers and the fluff in the bottom. And then measure out what we want to actually use on this first articulated segment of bucktail. We don't want this bucktail to extend past the flash, the bang tail. It's pretty close right there. So we'll trim that off. And tie that down. Do about 3 loose wraps, and then take your thumbnail and press down on top of that tie and distribute the bucktail fibers 360 degrees around the hook. Then lash it down. Now we don't want that bucktail to flare on us too much, so as we get down towards the base of that tie-in, just make a few loose wraps to keep that from flaring out. Then come up towards the eye a little bit and some tight wraps. Now we can whip finish that. Now I've got 2 more articulated segments to do, and those are done just exactly the way I showed you on this first bucktail tie. So I don't want to get you bored. So I've already got a section of the tail all tied up. That has all of those articulated segments. Has the bang tail and the 3 5/8 inch articulated segments. So we're kind of fast forwarding to the next step of the fly tie. We're going to use a 1/0 Gamakatsu hook, Gamakatsu Stinger B10S. And you can make these flies weighted or unweighted, depending upon your fishing conditions. This one, I'm going to leave it unweighted. So we'll start the thread up here at the top and build a nice thread base. Little tier's trick. If you want to completely coat the shank of the hook with thread, hold the tag end at a 45-degree angle, and it will help direct each wrap of your tying thread so those wraps are touching. Move our tag and come down just at the start of going around the bend. Now we're going to attach our articulated tail, and I'm going to use some 30-pound fluorocarbon. And we'll tie that in, starting on the far side of the hook. Make sure those wraps are nice and tight so it is secure. We'll cut off what we don't need there. Take our articulated tail and attach that. Okay, now we'll apply some more Zap-A-Gap to that as additional security to keep that fluorocarbon from pulling out if a fish gets a hold of that tail. There we go. Now we're going to have a little bit of internal body flash, and for that I'm using some UV polar chenille in a medium, and this is in a silver. So we'll tie some of that in right at the base, right at the bend of the hook. We don't need too much of that, but it'll provide a little bit of flash in there for us. off our excess. And sweep those fibers on the chenille backward as best we can and lash down the chenille. Okay, now our next tie is going to be with the yellow bucktail. We'll pull off a fairly good sized clump of that. About half of a pencil diameter, I guess. And pull out again some of those longer fibers that we don't need. And then grasp it midway and pull out the short fibers and the fluff. Okay, let's measure this to see what we want to use in our fly, and we want that to be down over some of those articulated segments, but not quite as long as the extension of the tail. About there is about right. We'll trim off our excess. And tie that in ahead of our flash. Use about 3 or 4 loose wraps. And again, put your thumb on top, press down, and force those fibers as best we can 360 degrees around the hook. Lash the rest of that down. Next will be some external flash. For that, we're going to use some pearl Flashabou. Take about half a dozen, 6 or 8 strands of Flashabou. Put those around the thread, even them up on both sides, and tie them down on one side. Take half that bundle to the far side. Have a tickle this morning. I think we'll leave those full length, about as long as the rest of the fly. Clean it up a little bit. There we go. So we're going to do one more tie of the yellow bucktail. Take a clump about the same size as the first one. And clean that up in the same way. And we want this to be a little shorter than the last clump that we tied, about right in there. And we're going to use a bulkhead method for tying this down to give the fly a little more bulk towards the front and push more water. So I'm going to trim this off about right there. So I have a probably 3/8 of an inch of fiber sticking out in front of my tie-in point. About like that. Three or four loose wraps. Again, thumbnail on top. Distribute those fibers close to 360 degrees as best we can. Okay, now we take our handy dandy push tool, and this is just the exterior stem off of a ballpoint pen, cheap ballpoint pen. We're going to push those fibers back as much as we can. You won't get them all, but get most of them. Push those fibers back and hold them with your fingers of your left hand. Now bring the thread to the front and build up a cone of thread in front of those, the stub ends of the fibers. Okay, and we'll need to trim a little bit here. Any of those fibers that are sticking up a little too far, we'll want to trim and blend those into the longer fibers of the tie. That's good enough. Now we're going to use some lateral scale at this point. We just need one strand of lateral scale. This stuff is a little less than 1/8 of an inch wide. Put it over the hook, even up both ends. Tie that lateral scale down on one side. Take half of it to the other side and lash it all down. So we have one strand of lateral scale that goes on each side of the hook. No need to trim, it's just fine the way it is. Our next material is a saddle hackle. So I've got a cape here, and we'll pull off a couple of saddle hackles that are approximately the same length. That look about the same. And put those together and even up the tips. Then we measure our length. We want our saddle hackles to be about maybe 3/4 the length of the entire fly. Cut off our excess. Now we'll tie those in one at a time. So if you notice on the saddle hackles, there's a shiny side and a dull side. We want the shiny side out. Now we're through with the yellow thread, so let's whip finish and get rid of it. And attach our orange thread. Okay, so our next material, last material, is going to be the orange bucktail. We want a little larger clump of the orange bucktail for this application. Just ignore that phone ringing, I'm going to. Noisy thing, isn't it? Okay, let's clean up the bucktail just like before. Let's measure out our length. We want that to be a little shorter than the last tie. There we go. But we're also going to put this in a reverse bulkhead style. I'll show you what that means. So we're going to want to cut this so we have about the 3/8 of an inch of material past the tie-in point. Now we've got to switch hands carefully so we don't mess up that bundle, and then hold that so the fibers are extending out the front of the fly, and then switch hands and hold on to the bundle and tie that down with 3 or 4 loose wraps, and then thumbnail on top again and spread those fibers. It's a little bit of a challenge because we've got the eye of the hook to work around, but they'll go around, so that's pretty good. Tie that bundle down. Just a little bit of trimming has to be done to some of those fibers are a little longer than what I'd hoped. Now take our push tool and go in the end of that bundle and push those fibers rearward. Stroking them back and holding them back with your fingers. And then start wrapping your thread where you hold those fibers down. We've got some errant fibers that insisted on coming out the front of the fly. We'll trim those off here in a minute. Wrap back over our orange bucktail, and we're going to create a thread head for the fly. Whip finish, snip off our tag, and let's trim some of those escaped fibers out of our way. that'll work. Now, we're gonna put some eyes on these things. We're gonna use some stick-on eyes. These are like, 3/16 stick-on eyes, maybe another 1/8 small stick-on eyes, which is problematic because they tend to want to stick to your fingers too. So we're going to take the super glue gel, and on one side we'll put the tiniest drop of super glue gel we can get out of that bottle. It doesn't take very much at all. We're just sticking these on there temporarily because we'll come back and put an epoxy head or coating on this, and we'll secure those eyes in place. Rely on your bodkin as much as you can to get the eye moved around to where you want it. That's good. More super glue gel on the other side. And another eye. There we go. So we'll let those cure, and then I'll take some epoxy and spread that over the head and put this on my drying wheel, and that'll let that epoxy flow around the head and finish off the fly. And that will complete our Critter Gitter fly pattern. Give that a try for wipers and stripers, pike, anything else that'll eat a big minnow.